Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back on this beautiful Sunday evening/night, depending on where it is you're joining us from. As we speak, it's still goalless between Real Madrid and Girona. I'm following up on that game, and that's the game we'll be following up on as we discuss some of the results from the Premier League today. Manchester United were victorious, while Liverpool also bounced back to winning ways. Realist Arsenal salvaged a point. A very, very poor Arsenal managed to salvage a point against Chelsea on Super Sunday. So we're going to be discussing that and more. But while at it, allow me to have our audios tested. Make sure everything does check out perfectly well before we get into the thick and depth of tonight's conversation. So really, but thank you so much. To our new subscribers, we say welcome to the Football Tribe UG community. We hope that you do enjoy your stay with us here and you get to love what we do as you check out all our respective content under the short section, under the video section, under the live section. So thank you so much. Okay. Allow me have our updates our headline. Yep. So I think we're good to go. Anyways, it's been that kind of day. I think there were surprises from the weekend, surprises in the context of our prediction on the broadcast, but also beautiful performances to commend, some superseding what our expectations had been. I thought the game between Chelsea and Arsenal would be close, but it was far from that, as Arsenal were nowhere near good enough. On a day where I thought referee Anthony Taylor sort of did not manage the game well. I thought it didn't look pretty for him. I thought he was right. I don't know. I don't want to say he rushed his decisions, but it felt as if he was handling a game between a small team and a big team. A part of him must have forgotten that he was trying to handle a derby, and a derby comes with its, ugly sins and shenanigans, Not that you should let each of the ugly sins slide or fly, but there must be a point in you where, look, you assess the game with that at the back of your mind, that, this is a derby, that it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be a bit scrappy. It's going to be a bit overly physical, given the kind of, teams that are, up against each other and things like that. And yet, I did not think that he handled the game with that spirit or in that manner or with that at the back of his mind, really overall. But in as far as the Premier League was concerned, today, the day kicked off with a brilliant victory for Manchester United against Crystal Palace, as they won that game by 2-1. Jean-Philippe Mateta converted from the penalty spot after foul had been committed on him by Lenny Yoro. That was in the 36th minute. He scored from the penalty spot to make it 1-0 for Crystal Palace to give them that much desired lead. But in the second half, Manchester United made amends with 2 goals from 2 set pieces. Free kicks, the first coming to Bruno Fernandes, who provided the assist for Joshua Zirkzee to restore parity in the 54th minute. That was 9 minutes after the restart, while in the 63rd minute, Mason Mount also scored from a dead ball situation with Bruno Fernandes, providing the assist. The reason as to why I say that is because they started a short free kick, and basically he passed it to Mason Mount, who was sort of close to him, about 3 feet away from him, and he managed to strike that ball to the near post to beat Dean Henderson, and the ball hit the back of the net, so it finished 2-1 in favor of the visitors. The reason as why I say it was a brilliant result, it's not because Manchester United had an overly outstanding performance compared to their, to their opponents on the day, but they dominated the key affairs of the game in the sense of possession to the tune of 56% compared to 44% for Crystal Palace. They had Both sides had a total of 14 shots on goal, although Crystal Palace, only 3 of those went on target, whereas Manchester United had 6 of them go on target. But like I said, it's not the kind of dominancy you'd say, wow, it's surprising that United scored, maybe fewer goals. That wasn't the case, really. It wasn't the case. But it happened in such a manner that you thought, when it mattered the most, they stepped up, got the job done, and defended well. And they did their job in terms of defending, and defended really, really well. So they got the result. And like I keep saying, at the end of the day, when we go past one match week and go on to the next, and what matters most is the result at the end of the day, because for a team, it won't count if you're bottom of the league or in a very poor position if you're playing well but not winning. So winning has a huge part to do with it. So in some cases, and we know that over the course of a season, you cannot look good in all games. There are games you're going to have to scrap out a result. There are games you're going to have to scrap out a result. And Manchester United did just that. They weren't too good, but they got the result. And that's what is most important. Anyways, so it finished 2-1 in favor of Manchester United, which I thought was a very, very good result for Ruben Amorim, who was starting to come under pressure following the last 3 games where he had lost one, losing to Everton by 0-0. Really, the previous 2 games had ended in 2-2 draws against Tottenham Hotspur and against Nottingham Forest, respectively. So, in that sort of sense or regard, that's what qualifies it for me as a very, very decent result for him, really. And then in the other game, this was so far contrary to our own predictions, but at least Aston Villa still managed to win. But the fact that the goalkeeper, Emiliano Martinez, turned out to be the match winner is what tells you everything you need to know about this game, as Aston Villa beat up against Wolverhampton Wanderers at Villa Park by 0-0. That goal scored by Boubacar Kamara in the 67th minute of the game. I, for one, had gone for a 4-1 prediction in favor, 3-1 prediction in favor of Aston Villa, but close to what happened yesterday against Manchester City, where I had predicted a 4-1 victory against Leeds United and it finished 3-2, needing a late winner by Phil Foden in the 91st minute or in the first minute of stoppage time. This one is also the kind of result where Aston Villa had to grind it out. And for me, I practically understand why teams have sort of basically behaved, or some of these teams have behaved the way they have behaved. One, we returned from the November international break and they played a game that was match day at 12. And then midweek, majority of these teams had engagements, particularly teams like Man City, Arsenal, Chelsea, Aston Villa, Crystal Palace. And you remember when we were doing the preview for that Crystal Palace, when I said, although our prediction had been a 1-1 draw, I did say that I wouldn't be surprised if either team won it, although I tilted towards Manchester United because for one reason, they're a well-rested team. You played and you've had an entire week to rest it out. Whereas Crystal Palace were busy getting beaten up by Strasbourg in the UEFA Conference League, where they're not looking too pretty, by the way, because they also lost, I think it was on match day 3 against Lanaka. So really, in that sort of sense, Aston Villa equally had a midweek game against Young Boys, which they won by 2-1. Daniel Malen scoring in both fixtures, scoring both goals in that game. And they came today and they didn't look good overall, like in comparison to the Aston Villa that we've watched in recent times, because I think Wolverhampton Wanderers had a goal ruled out for an offside. I think, who had it been? Was it by Jorgen Larsson? I think, yeah. He's the one who had scored. So, anyways, Aston Villa's 52% possession compared to 47% for Wolves tells you that. The 1xG, the 1 goal expected, tells you that. Albeit they had 16 shots on goal compared to Wolves' 9, and 6 of those were on target compared to Wolves' 4. Again, Wolves will feel hard done by, given that they gave a better performance than they had given in recent times to almost deserve a result in this particular game. But at the end of the day, if you cannot put the ball in the back of the net, then really results are not going to go your way, and you will only have yourself to blame, really. So it simply boils down to that. It simply boiled down to that, and nothing more, nothing less, really. Um, Next time, perhaps better. And like I said, quickly there will be action in midweek, so we'll get to look at that. But the other game was a total reverse of what my prediction was. I'd predicted that Nottingham Forest would beat up against Brighton and Hove Albion by 2 goals to nil, but it was the reverse. Brighton beat up against Nottingham Forest by 2 goals to nil. Fabian Hatzler outsmarting not me, but Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest did not look good, to be honest. Yes, they dominated certain affairs of the game, like the marginal 52% on ball possession compared to Brighton is 48%, 19 shots on goal, really only 3 went on target. But Brighton had just as much with 17 shots on goal, with 6 on target, really. Corners were 9-2 in favor of Nottingham Forest. Sean Dyche will look to correct certain mistakes that saw them register a poor result, but they had had a good run. They were unbeaten since losing to Bournemouth across all competitions. That's in the Premier League and the UEFA Europa League. But yeah, like I said, Nottingham Forest is one of those teams who had an engagement against Malmo, that is in the UEFA Europa League during the course of midweek. Even though there was many changes from the team that played in midweek, it still did not help. For example, Danny Ndoye did not play in midweek. He was not part of that starting 11. He was among the players rested, but I think they did miss Morillo in that backline because they had to go with Nikola Milenkovic alongside Morata, Williams and Savona, Souls, of course, in goal, Elliot Anderson in midfield alongside Ibrahim Sangare, with Morgan Gibbs ahead of him, Dominguez, Igor Jesus, but that side of Verbruggen, Lewis Dunk, Van Hecke, Kadioglu, Wafer, of course, Yassine Ayari, Joe Gomez, Dikupia, Max Dikupia, by the way, one of the goal scorers in that game, as well in the first minute of stoppage time of the first half. He scored, and then Zimas or Timas, I don't know. I think it's pronounced Timas. Yankuba Minte, Ruta, and Danny Welbeck in that game. So really, but Timas came off the bench to score in that game. Beautiful game of football for Brighton, and very significant result for them. Again, you see, it's usually very challenging when you come up against a team that is been well rested for an entire week. They usually just have that little bit of more gas in the tank, and that's why the margins are not so big. When you look at, for example, Man United beating up against Crystal Palace, the margins were not that far off. When you look at this particular game, Nottingham Forest getting beat by 2 goals to nil. Yes, Nottingham Forest were not clinical with their chances, but in terms of the overall contest, they were not so far off. And teams like Man United and Brighton are getting that benefit over having a well-rested team. Meanwhile, Kylian Mbappe has scored to give Real Madrid the lead. It was a bit of a scrappy goal there. I can see we have a comment. Let me see if I can read that comment before we proceed any further. It comes from FTBL, says hi. Or hey to you too, my brother. Good to have you on the broadcast. What happened? What happened to what exactly? But it's good to have you on the broadcast. Girona seem to be contesting the manner in which the goal was scored. I don't know if they're claiming a foul, I think, on one of their players in the area before Kylian Mbappe scraps that ball and buries it beyond the reach of the goalkeeper to hit the back of the net. It's been a bit of a scrappy goal. Then in the other game, Liverpool returned to winning ways after beating up against West Ham United by 2 goals to nil. The game finished with West Ham being reduced to 10 men following Lucas Paqueta's straight red card. I mean, I don't know. I get the feeling that Gerard Bowen okay. Somebody, FTBL is asking, you from Nigeria? No, I'm from Kampala, Uganda. Thanks for asking. Why is this video empty? Live empty? Empty of what? Empty. What do you mean by empty? Empty of what? I told you, I've said this before. Even if there's one person when I come on the broadcast, that's the person I'll serve. That's the beauty of the sport. It's a passion thing, But thanks for your question. But I'm from Kampala, Uganda, in case you're wondering. Do let me know where you're joining us from. Meanwhile, in that game for Real Madrid against Girona, the referee has been sent to the monitor because apparently there appears to have been a handball in the build-up to the goal. Kylian Mbappe appears to touch the ball before he parries it into the back of the net. And I think the goal could be cancelled out. I think the goal is going to be cancelled out, really. Yeah, that's been the decision. Sorry. Yep, the goal has been cancelled out for handball in the build-up to the goal, so it won't stand. So it remains 0-0 between Girona and Real Madrid. There, interesting action there. But at the end of the day, I do expect Real Madrid to win this game. If they can't beat up against Girona, who have been really, really, really poor this season, even as we speak, they are 18th on that league standing log. So really, these are the kinds of teams that Real Madrid should be beating up against. Anyways, like I was saying, Alexander Isak was off the mark in as far as his Premier League score sheet is concerned. He did score in the 60th minute, a brilliant goal, with a strike to the near post to beat Alfonso Areola in goal, while Cody Gakpo scored. That was in the second minute of stoppage time to make sure, to guarantee that Liverpool walked away with all 3 points. Of course, winning the game by 2-0. Cody Gakpo scored one and provided the assist, had provided the assist for the earlier goal for Alexander Isak. Meanwhile, Joe Gomez was the assist provider for that, Liverpool, to that Cody Gakpo goal. When you look at the overall statistics of the game, again, Liverpool were dominant of the ball to the tune of 56%. That pretty much you expected. They had 5 shots on target compared to West Ham's 0. I mean, West Ham did not compete well, really. They did not compete well. And them being reduced to 10 men did not help their efforts, even though it was still late on. Because, when the game, for as long as the game is still 1-0, even if it is the last kick of the final minute of the game, you still have a chance to restore parity and perhaps scrap out a point in that case. But once they got reduced down to 10 men, it was always going to be difficult for them. And it's yet another game today that in which we saw a red card. The other red card came yesterday in Bournemouth's game, and also meanwhile, Girona have scored to go in the lead. It's 1-0 to Girona. Real Madrid have just had the goal cancelled out there for handball in the build-up, which would have given them the lead. It got ruled out, and now Girona have gone on the other end and scored. So it's 1-0 to Girona. Then the other game that ended with 10 men was the Chelsea game against Arsenal, and we're going to review that in its full breadth. Otherwise, I thought, Mo Salah was dropped to the bench. I started opting to go for Florian Wirtz in his place with Cody Gakpo on the other side. They kept that alternation of Florian Wirtz, Szoboszlai, but that we saw that midfield of Gravenberch, McAllister, Isak getting off the mark. I think that is going to do him a huge, I don't want to call it a favor, but it gives him a lot of weight in as far as giving him confidence going into the next round of fixtures. We know that Liverpool are going to come up against a very, very difficult opponent in midweek when they take on Sunderland, who after playing Liverpool will be up against Manchester City subsequently. That means, by the way, Sunderland have played Arsenal. That means Sunderland would have played Arsenal, Bournemouth, Liverpool, Manchester City in succession. That's a very difficult run of fixtures. And by the way, they yet to get beat because they drew against Arsenal and beat up against Bournemouth by 3-2 yesterday. Daniel Tuton says, "Hi, how are you? I'm good, my brother. Good to have you. I had a game today and we won 4-0 and I scored 3 goals. Congratulations on your hat trick there. in that game. Really, congratulations on that. Girona fans are celebrating as though they've won the game, yet the game is still young. We're into those added minutes of stoppage time for the first half. But yeah, we'll keep following the events from that game. But like I said, the goal scorer is Onahi. Onahi is the goal scorer. So congratulations to you, Daniel Tuton, on your hat trick in your game today. We keep hoping that you continue winning. Did you watch the Liverpool game? Yes, I did. We won 2-0. Yes, congratulations on the win. I mean, it must have felt good, really, really, for Liverpool fans, especially bearing in mind that it was an away game. That's their 7th victory of the season in 13 games. Liverpool do not draw games. Either they get beat or they beat you. It's that simple, regardless of who the opponent is. And that's how they behaved, even in the UEFA Champions League. And I don't know. I don't know if it's a bad thing or a good thing. Because if they are drawing the game, they always fight and win the game. But when they are losing the game, they never fight to even draw the game. So it depends on how you look at it, really. But yeah, beautiful game of football there, like I said. And then, so again, he made the right decision for me in putting Joe Gomez at right back. That is what we had been calling for. I've spoken about this on different forums, that if our Anna slot, I'll be playing Joe Gomez at right back as opposed to playing the Dominic Soboslai in the absence of Jeremy Frimpong and Conor Bradley. And he did just that. And it paid off. It paid off. They ended up winning. So very, very vital result there for Liverpool. Very vital 3 points, especially on the day that Manchester United had won, a team with whom they were already on tally with points. Really. So then then in the late kickoff of Super Sunday, that was the game between Arsenal and Chelsea. Now, guys, to say that Arsenal were poor on the day would be an understatement. And the reason as to why I use that is because given by the measure of their own standards, they were so poor. They were so poor. They had an XG of 1.2. They're really, really, really poor. I mean, compared to the team that beat up against Tottenham Hotspur last weekend, the team that beat up against Bayern Munich in midweek, and playing today, that was a poor performance. They will know it. We know it. But what were the results? Of course, Chelsea, for me, started off as the much better side. They dominated majority of the aspects of the game. One of the things that Arsenal did well in that, especially in the opening half, was to try and limit Chelsea's chances. Because while Chelsea had chances, they sort of fell far between. And some of them came from Arsenal's own lapses in concentration. For example, there's an opportunity that falls, I think, to, I don't know if it was William Estaval, but it was Mosquera who had sort of back-flipped or back-killed the ball in his direction. And then there's a moment that falls to Joao Pedro because Pierre Hincap had failed to deal with the ball. And he fell because he was falling, So, and then the other was William Estaval, dribbling, coming on inside to his, left and having a strong shot, but it was way over the bar. And there's, I think, another couple of moments here and there, but Arsenal just did not look comfortable. They were never comfortable in that game. Chelsea were winning so many duels in that midfield. Of course, I thought some decisions did not go Arsenal's way. So, for example, there's that moment where Anthony Taylor says it's a shoulder-to-shoulder challenge when Moises Caicedo clatters into Uran Timber from behind and he doesn't give a foul. Surprisingly, in the same game, he gave a similar incident for a foul. I think, was it Mosquera? I don't know if it was Mosquera who was the suspect in that particular scene, and he gave a yellow card. And I'm thinking, you did not give that for a foul. Of course, by the time we concluded the first half, it was goalless, but Chelsea had been reduced to 10 men following the sending off of Moises Caicedo for a dangerous tackle on Mikel Merino. It really looked nasty. And I don't know why Anthony Taylor did not give a straight red card, but maybe he thought it hadn't been as bad as it seemed, because I felt he was really, really close. from where the incident happens, because the incident happens, and because Arsenal remain in possession, he gives the advantage, and then he comes back to it later because both players are down on the floor, claiming they were in pain. Of course, for Mikel Merino, it was obvious he was in pain because of the dangerous tackle, but Moises Caicedo was purely faking it, purely faking it, trying to hoodwink the referee, and of course, when the game comes to a stop, the referee summons the respective team doctors to come and take care of their players. And at the end of it all, as he walks off, Moises Caicedo is given a yellow card. And now, for us who are not the referee, who had already gotten the opportunity to review the incident in a replay before the referee does, a lot of people were already saying, that's a red card. That's a red card. Now, because it's a derby, I don't know. My first instant was I was giving it a benefit of the doubt. But when the more I looked at it, the more I came to the same conclusion that indeed it was a red card. Because I tried so much not to lose my objectivity when such things happen, So, but it really, really looked nasty. And that means Moises Caicedo is going to miss Chelsea's next 3 games, by the way, because it was a straight red card. Now, the second half resumes. I thought Mikel Arteta was going to make changes in that second half, like at halftime. And some of those changes, I looked at the team and I said, if I'm him, I'm withdrawing Martin Zubimendi and bringing on Martin Odegaard. I'm withdrawing one of the centre backs to bring on Ben White. That's what I thought to myself, because the game William Saliba missed the game, having suffered a knock in training. And when Mikel Arteta was asked about this, he said he felt something and they did not want to risk him in the game, which was the right decision to make. But he said they had yet to assess the extent of the injury or of the knock, but he said it did appear too serious that he could be out for long. Now, that's the good part. But then the bad part is that he could still miss another game or two, because they only have between Monday and Tuesday to assess that. And because on Wednesday they go again, and they will be up against a team that played on Saturday. So that means they have an extra day of rest, and we're talking about a team. Again, this is the whole advantage with all this. Arsenal are going to be playing a team who are going to have had a 1 day's more rest, a team who did not have last week midweek engagements, which gives them another advantage. So, but that's the purpose for you having a broad squad, so that you can rotate in some of these games when they come around, so that you can have more energized players, to compete favorably. But I thought Arsenal really, really had a bad day in office. So we came into the second half, and the only change Mikel Arteta had done was withdrawing Ricardo Carafiori for Miles Lewis-Kelly. I do not know whether that was a tactical decision or Ricardo Carafiori had felt something, because we know that he played against Tottenham Hotspur, he played in midweek against Bayern Munich. So, but in midweek against Bayern Munich, he was brought on. He did not start that game. So he had been given a rest. But we know that in the November international break, he missed both fixtures for Italy through a knock. So maybe his fitness has not been at its best, because really he had the game against Tottenham Hotspur. Against Bayern Munich, he did better, but he came off the bench. Like I said, he was rested. Today, he did not have a bad game, but he did not have the best game by his own standards. But hey, it's only not Carafiori. The overall Arsenal team did not have a good day in office, like I said. They're just having a horrible day in office. Excuse me. So, really, so we come back for the second half. Arteta has made that change, and Chelsea go forward. They win a free kick. Arsenal able to defend it. They win a resultant corner, and Trevor Chalobah rises higher than most Arsenal players, and he flicks that ball into the back of the net. Now, Christian Mosquera, who was sort of guarding the post and also marking Enzo Fernandez on his line, I do not know whether he did not see the flight of the ball properly, but I thought he was in a good position to contest for that ball to head it out before it hits the back of the net. So for me, I thought he was suspect in conceding that goal. Of course, they had managed to keep David Raya away, and Arsenal did not protect their near post well enough. But that ball was well floated in by Richie James, really. It was a very, very good ball, and Trevor Chalobah got at the end of it in the 48th minute, and he scored to make it 1-0 for Chelsea. Now, in the 59th minute, Arsenal restored parity through Mikel Merino. Another brilliant header, cross is brought in by Bukayo Saka, who I thought was immaculate on the day. One, he did not really have a good day. Like I said, the entire Arsenal team. You struggle to look for an Arsenal player who had a good day, a good game. Martin Zubimendi did not have a good game. Maybe Mikel Merino did fairly well. Declan Rice did not have, that wasn't one of his good performances. The back four, the front three, whether it was Gabriel Martinelli, whether it was Bukayo Saka. Yes, Bukayo Saka ended up with his first assist of the season, and Mikel Merino scoring to restore parity for the Arsenal. But at the end of the day, it was bad. Now, the positives to take away from this, because like I told you, and I do not want to blame Arsenal too much. Why? Because they've had a hectic week. And I remember thinking this was bound to happen, because what most Arsenal fans' prayer was that they beat up against Tottenham Hotspur, drew against Bayern Munich, and beat up against Chelsea. Now they beat up against Spurs and Bayern Munich, but drew against Chelsea. So that's how it came about. But I think when they sit back to assess themselves at the end of a very, very busy week, they'll be confident that they've done well against really, really big teams. Because playing against Tottenham Hotspur, as shambolic as they were in the North London derby, and then playing against Bayern Munich, and then Chelsea. Remember, Chelsea played on Tuesday and Arsenal played on Wednesday. So that meant that Chelsea got an extra day's rest compared to the Arsenal. So when Chelsea were dominant, I wasn't too surprised in the aspects that they dominated, particularly in the first half. One, first of all, they were at home. Two, they really have a very strong midfield led by Moises Caicedo at the pivot of it, who is very, very good at winning the ball back. Although I thought he got away with a little too much before he gets his actual sending off. The fouls he committed there, and I looked at Anthony Taylor and I'm thinking, that should be a yellow card compared to the yellow cards you dished out against Zubimendi, against Mosquera, against Hincapi, against Carafiori, because by the end of the first half, the game had 6 cards, 1 red card, 5 yellow cards, 1 yellow card to Chelsea, that was for Marco Correa, the red card to Moises Caicedo, Arsenal having 4 yellow cards, Martin Zubimendi, Christian Mosquera, Pierre Hincap, and Ricardo Carafiori. So that also tells you the kind of game it was, And whereas to the letter of the law, you qualify all incidents as bookable offenses, I thought for the game of its magnitude, that one, it's a London derby, two, it's not just any London derby, but it's a London derby between Chelsea and Arsenal. These are 2 giants of the Premier League, I felt that Anthony Taylor could have handled certain situations better. That whereas he did not need to dish out fouls, because in some cases, players were getting booked for fast offenses. For Marco Correa, I think it took about 2 or 3, So that's how it felt for me. So what are the positives to take away from this? One, I think Chelsea will be really, really happy with the result. One, they stopped Arsenal from winning. Two, they got a point, even though they had been reduced to 10 men. And they will be really, really proud of their performance, even when they were down to 10 men. Then, on the side of Arsenal, one, like I said, they will be very disappointed with themselves that they did not capitalize on the fact that, Chelsea were down to 10 men for more than 50, for almost 60 minutes of that game. When you add stoppage times inclusive, because in the first half it was 5 minutes, and I think 4 minutes at the end of it, after the 90th minute mark, So They blame themselves. However, the positives for Arsenal, one, is they managed to pick out a point. Two, so they avoided defeat. Two is that they did welcome back some players from injury. Again, we had already seen Martin Odegaard against Bayern Munich, but we saw him again. He did not look great when he came on. I think the first 5 minutes he looked okay, but overall he did not impress me. Two or three, or still on the same point, they welcome back Victor Gyökeres. And he has that moment where he tries to get at the end of a loose ball that is sort of being served by Robert Sanchez, who sort of fumbles it there before he gets to it on the rebound. He rushed onto that and he got himself booked, by the way. So Arsenal had as many as 5 yellow cards in that game, really. As many as 5 yellow cards in that game. So, in fact, 6. That's 6. Because even Miles Lewis Kelly, who came on in the second half, got himself booked, you know. Then what's the other positive? So those are the only positives that Arsenal will take out of that game. But in terms of their outlook of their squad, they must be feeling really disappointed that for the first time, I think for the second time, since the 2022-2023 campaign, was it for the second time or for the first time? One of the two. Arsenal started a Premier League football game without either of Gabriel Magalhaes or William Saliba. That speaks to the consistency with which that defensive pair has been in that Arsenal backline. Of course, they missed their leadership, whether it's, the way we saw William Saliba behave against Real Madrid. Against Bayern Munich, when he had Mosquera as his to command. And today we're seeing a partnership of Pierre Hincap and Christian Mosquera for the second time this season. The first time we saw it was against Brighton and Hove Albion, and that was in the fourth round of the EFL Cup. That game they ended up winning by 2-0, but those two had a very difficult start to that game, So the negatives overall in regards to the Arsenal squad is, one, the absence of Leandro Trossard, even though it said could be out for 2 weeks, maybe. Then William Saliba and Gabriel Magalhaes all to be missing. Excuse me. Did not look pretty. But also remember, they had Gabriel Jesus on the bench for the first time in 11 months, having been out with that anterior cruciate ligament injury. And as the game wore on, I thought he was going to bring him on, because I thought for a player who likes to physically impose himself on the game, who has the dribbling skills, they could have used him in the game, but it did not happen that way. At the end of the day, I always live, again, I thought Julian Timber should have been withdrawn to be given a rest by, I think, the 70-something minutes there. He looked tired. It could show on his face. He looked exhausted, really, really drained, Julian Timber. And yet, Mikel Arteta still could not bring on Ben White. And I was thinking to myself, why can't you make that substitution, really? Why can you not? Because at the end of the day, he only made 4 substitutions, But he did not do that. But at the end of the day, he's the manager. And Arsenal are going to have their title credentials really, really tested within this period of 2 weeks. They've gone through these first 3 tests. Midweek, they come up against Brentford. We know how Brentford have been stubborn against big sides. They've beaten up against Man United. They've beaten up against Liverpool. They've beaten up against Newcastle. So they've been really, really good. However, away from home, they tend to struggle. Nonetheless, expect them to play a very, very defensive game against Arsenal. So you have to play Brentford on Wednesday, and then the subsequent weekend, which will be, and I don't know. I don't know who the manager of the Premier League calendar is, or schedule, because they must be one of the worst game schedulers that you will ever find. And here's why. Hear me out on this one. One, You have teams that have played on Sunday. Of course, you give them Monday and Tuesday to rest. Then they go again on Wednesday. And suddenly you bring them back in action on Saturday. For example, and this is why I say they're really, really bad. Because we do have midweek games. And Arsenal, who play on Wednesday at 10:30 p.m. against Brentford at home, when you go to match day 15, they come in the early kickoff at 3:30 away to Aston Villa. And I'm thinking to myself, yes, the subsequent week, they have UEFA Champions League football and they will be playing away to Club Brugge. But why on God's green earth are you not bringing that game like in the late kickoff? Like, why? You know, sometimes I know TV has influence on these things. But anyways, here's what's to come your way in midweek as far as the Premier League is concerned. On Tuesday, there will be 3 games. Everton at 10:30 p.m. will be away to the Vitality Stadium against Bournemouth. Fulham will be at home against Manchester City at the same kickoff time, while at 11:15 p.m., Newcastle will entertain Tottenham Hotspurs. Then on Wednesday, Arsenal will be at home against Brentford. You have 4 games kicking off at 10:30 p.m. East African time. Brighton will be at home against Aston Villa. Very uneasy game for Aston Villa there. Then Burnley will be at home against Crystal Palace. Wolverhampton Wanderers will be at home against Nottingham Forest. While at 11:15 p.m., Leeds United will entertain Chelsea. Liverpool will beat Sunderland. Sorry, will be at home against Sunderland. Now, I do not know, but here's among the things I anticipate in this run of fixtures. One is just to beat up against Leeds. Is Aston Villa to struggle against Brighton? Is Arsenal, even though they will be at home, to struggle against Brentford? Albeit, I think they will still win that game. And the reason why I say it's going to be a week that tests their credentials. Everybody's going to be eager to see how Arsenal bounce back from that draw. You know, how do they behave? Because unlike the Sunderland draw, before meeting Tottenham Hotspurs, you had a 2 weeks period of international break. So this is going to be a huge test for them. But like I said, the positives for them is that they've welcomed back some muscle within their squad. The return of Victor Gyökeres, Martin Odegaard inclusive, Noni Madueke, who came on and did not have a good game at all. Then you've welcomed back Gabriel Jesus. I do not think either Gabriel Jesus will start, but yeah, it's that kind of game. So then I expect Liverpool to sort of struggle against Sunderland. They could struggle. I mean, Sunderland are relentless. Granit Xhaka, what a signing, what a player. You know? So let's wait and see. But that action in the midweek will wrap up on Thursday when Manchester United take on West Ham United at 11 p.m. And then, of course, we'll wait for match day 15 of the subsequent weekend, and after which we'll go to the UEFA Champions League. This period of 3 weeks is going to be really, really trouble for teams that have engagements in Europe. And this period is going to be really, really trouble for teams that are still in the EFL Cup. You know, because as you know, once Champions League is played next week, sorry, not next week, next week, but one on 10th and 9th, the subsequent week, after the subsequent week, you'll have midweek games in the EFL Cup, quarterfinals. So take note of that, you know. So all that action is going to be coming really, really thick and fast. Meanwhile, guys, as we speak, Real Madrid are still yet to find the breakthrough against Girona. Girona still leading that game by a 0-0. And then in the Italian Serie A, AC Roma are 1-0 behind against Napoli. That goal scored by Neres. I'm trying to remember his second name. Is it? Yes, David Neres is the goal scorer there. So, guys, do let me know what your thoughts were on all that action that we've assessed. But yeah, meanwhile, okay, these are the implications following the conclusion of match day 3. These are the implications on the Premier League table. Arsenal retained their top slot with 30 points after 13 games. That means they've drawn 2 in the last 5. Not looking pretty. Manchester City are second, only 5 points, adrift of Arsenal. Newcastle come third. So, apologies at Newcastle. I don't know why Newcastle is on my lips. But Chelsea come third with 24 points, as is a fourth placed Aston Villa. Brighton, Sunderland come 5th and 6th, respectively, with 22 points. Their 7th is Man United and 8th is Liverpool with 21 points each. Crystal Palace, who started the day in 5th place, have slipped down to 20th, where they are a point ahead of Brentford and FC Bournemouth, who all have 19 points. Released Newcastle, following the 4-1 victory against Everton yesterday, they moved closer to Tottenham Hotspur with 18 points. Tottenham also have 18 points, as well as Everton. So with Fulham in 15th place on 17 points, having beaten up against Tottenham Hotspur by 2-1 yesterday. Then Wolverhampton Wanderers, Burnley, and Leeds, those complete the bottom 3. So we'll wait and see what's to come. And we'll continue to assess all that tomorrow morning and in the subsequent days as we look towards the midweek fixtures. Otherwise, allow me wrap it here and wish you a blessed night. You've been such a wonderful audience. Thank you so much, FTBL. Thank you so much, Daniel Tuton, for chipping in, and every single one of you that has been part of this broadcast that has made it worthwhile. I do appreciate you a great deal. Do not forget to, keep sharing, keep commenting on our content so that the algorithm can recommend it to newer viewers. But thank you so much. Stay blessed and have a blessed night. But here, Real Madrid still searching for that equalizer. I don't know. Oh, he's going to put in a good ball. Trent Alexander-Arnold. Oh, it said it over the mark. Is that a head injury for Eder Militao? Could be. But anyways, stay blessed and good night. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.